Welcome, fellow Ravens. You're listening to the Hekate and Raven podcast, and I'm your host, the Art Occultist. I'm glad to have you here with me as I dive into this new adventure. Let's start with a little introduction, shall we? I've been a part of the spiritual community online for the past 5 years, and I've been participating on and off during that time. But most importantly, I've been observing and taking notes on the state of the so-called community as a whole, its shifts, and so on. At the end of last year, 2025, I felt truly disconnected from the community. I felt that it has shifted into something so toxic and fake that my stomach turned. So I stepped back and I took a break. I couldn't stand the bullshit anymore, the constant consumerism, the fighting between people claiming to be spiritual. I was lost for words to see people claiming to be the real deal, being blinded by their own biases, not being able to hold polarity or understand the basic principle of duality. So I went into a hermit mode. I took down most of the content I had on my channel and all across social media, really. I stepped down. I needed time to reflect. I needed time to deal with my negative observations and the community. And I needed time to decide whether or not I want to participate in a such toxic landscape. I was contemplating whether or not it was worth my time and my energy. And it was not an easy decision to step away. The Art Occultist is my baby, and it means the world to me. So it was a very difficult decision for me to step away. If you've been here before, you know that the Art Occultist is a devotional offering to my goddess, the Titaness Hekate. It's my way to give her voice and to spread her lessons and to share them with other practitioners and devotees. So even though I'm not happy with the landscape of the community as a whole, it's the only way I know how to fulfill her request of acting as her oracle. And that's why I'm back, because I don't like breaking promises, especially to her. And like I said, the Art Occultist is my baby, and it's really an important part of my spiritual work and development personally. So, after addressing my absence, let's talk about this podcast and my intentions about it. So, the idea of the Hecatean Raven was born last year in one of my meditations with, yeah, you guessed it right, Hekate. I was asking about guidance on something rather personal, and she called me her little raven, which at the time felt soothing and really lovely. During my break, as I was contemplating what to do with the channel, I jokingly said to myself, maybe you should start a podcast. And it came to me. It would be called the Hecatean Raven, and it's going to be a way for me to share, to discuss, and even teach, and openly speak on things and different topics that I find interesting or that spark curiosity, or if I find them controversial even. So, this podcast is my way of reclaiming my space, reclaiming my voice, and starting my own community. One that I don't find toxic, and one that is mature enough to hold polarity and not fight within. It's a place for deep self reflection and gnosis. I want it to be raw, truthful, and authentic. And in the future, I hope it will become a space for other Hecatean ravens as well. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, the name Hecatean obviously comes from the fact that I am devoted to Hekate, meaning I am one of hers. Raven holds that special meaning that I shared earlier about my meditation experience with Hekate, but also ravens travel between the worlds, between the spiritual and the mundane. They bridge the gap and they carry messages through both ways. And the name Hecatean Raven is just perfect for how I see myself at this stage of my spiritual development. And now is the time to jump to the other topic for today's episode that I had in mind after this brief introduction. And this topic is spiritual labels. I feel that we all start as seekers, all that are on the spiritual path. At some point, we start feeling that something is not enough. Something is not quite right with where we are at life. We intuitively know that there's more to life than just the sheer mundane experience. We get the itch, the impulse to seek, to learn, and to grow. And we begin the journey of a spiritual seeker. For me, this happened in 2009 at the early age of 15. With the spirituality and practice of Wicca. Prior to that, as a kid, an early teenager, I was already obsessed with witches, vampires, and the occult in fiction, in literature, in media. I loved watching witches in films, vampire media as well. And you see, I was a big reader as a child, and media and TV shows and movies were a way for me to escape from the uneasy situation that I was growing up in my household. But that's a story for a different time. So basically, I was a big reader as a child. I love exploring fiction and all those fantasy worlds. And it was a regular occurrence for me to skip classes from school to be at the local library reading and searching for new books to keep myself busy and distracted. So it was exactly in that same library in 2009 when I discovered my first non-fictional book about Wicca. And right then and there, my serious quest began. Later that same year, I also got my first tarot deck, and tarot is a love of mine that I've been carrying ever since that day that I bought my first deck. Okay, but let's get back to the topic at hand, and it being labels, spiritual labels. Even though I started with Wicca, nowadays I don't use that label anymore. I don't call myself Wiccan, even though I did for a number of years, especially in the beginning of my journey. But nowadays I don't use that label anymore because it doesn't suit me or my practice anymore. My point here is that labels are fluid. They can change as we grow, and it is important to let ourselves explore different ones as we progress. Using labels can be really beneficial for us when we communicate. Labels are a tool, if you will, that lets others know what we are about, what we do, and what we practice. Notice how I specifically didn't say that labels are who we are, because they are not, and there lays the danger. The danger with labels occur when practitioners start to identify with them with labels to an extent that they box themselves in and refuse to grow naturally because they fear the consequences of changing their labels and how they are going to be perceived by the community and society at large. And specifically because of that fear, I see so many spiritual practitioners stuck, unable to move forward, unable to progress, and basically they don't give themselves permission to explore new territories out of fear that they will be judged. And don't get me wrong, this is a very human thing to do. But as spiritual practitioners, we need to rise above that. We need to understand that labels are fluid and they're just a tool for a more useful and easier way to communicate what we do. That's what labels are for. And as as spiritual practitioners, growth and change are the two things that we should strive for, not fight against, not resist. Change is the only certain thing in this life, guys. Don't fight it. You cannot. Okay. Now, let me share some of the labels that I feel apply to my current patent practice so that you guys can get a better idea of me as a person, as a practitioner, and where I'm coming from. Okay, let's start with the name of this channel, and the name is the Art Occultist, so it has two components. The first one, art, self-explanatory, but basically it's there because I've always created art. Even ever since I was a little kid, I knew that I will be an artist one day when I grow up. My earliest memory from childhood is me drawing and telling my folks that I'm going to be a great artist, and I've never stopped creating since then. I also went to art university and I did the whole shebang. And by the way, you can check some of my artistic work on my coffee page in the gallery section. And there will be a link in the description box of this episode if you're curious to see of my work. I do a lot of different mediums. I paint, I do drawings, ink drawings. I love photography. You can check all of those things on my coffee page in the gallery section, as I mentioned. The second part of my name is occultist. So I chose that for its meaning. Occultist is someone that searches for the hidden, the mystical, the secret, the paranormal. Occultists seek knowledge and they seek to obtain it. And truthfully, art, magic, the mystical, they were always there for me. And I feel like the name suits me perfectly. The Art Occultist. That's the essence of who I am. I'm fascinated with the hidden, with the secret, with what hides behind the mass consciousness, if you will. I love expression and I love the marriage between those two. But let's move forward. The next label I want to explore is mystic. For me, being a mystic means that you value your own direct experiences with divinity and seek unity with it in whatever phase you venerate. For me, this is Hekate. Mystics seek unification with Godhead, and anybody from any spiritual path can become a mystic if that's their goal. Honestly, mysticism and seeking unity with the goddess is something very important to me, and I hold it very dear to my heart, and I practice it daily in my meditations. And when speaking of unity, the next label on the list is non duality. Non dualists are people that see no separation between self and the universe. And I began practicing non duality when I was deep into studying Hinduism, Advaita Vedanta, a little bit of Kashmir Shaivism, and Eastern philosophy in general. Yeah, that's where I learned the term non duality, and that's how I began associating it with what I do. It's a lens or label that really suits me, but that doesn't mean that I deny the fact that we operate in a world ruled by duality: black and white, good and bad, right versus wrong. I seek to hold the truth of opposites and exist beyond them. Exist beyond that, seeing the divinity in all, in both end of the spectrum. I see divinity in everything, because for me everything in existence come from the same source, from divinity. Even if I don't agree with something, if it doesn't resonate with me, it comes from divinity. Anyway, let's move forward. The next label on the list is eclectic. Eclectic is another label that I feel suits me very well because I study all kinds of disciplines, spiritual, non-spiritual, and I go deep with the things or subjects that spark my fascination. But not everything is a part of my path or practice. Even though I study a lot of different things, I adopt only what I deem useful and only what resonates on a deeper soulful level, if you will. Now, before anyone starts screaming cultural appropriation, let me stop you right there. I have the right to study whatever I want to study. That's that. Everyone has the right to be curious and to study different things. No, dear, I don't appropriate, I appreciate. And there is a difference. If I delve into a culture that is not mine and I want to study something within that culture, for example, Hinduism, I'm giving this example because I was really deeply influenced by Hinduism and I spent a few years deeply studying it. If I delve into a culture that is not mine, I always do it with the utmost respect, and I never take something out of context and call it my own. I will never do that. I have never done that. I take inspiration from what I learn and then I construct something personal that I can use in my own personal practice. It's not borrowed, it's not copied, it's inspired by. And there's a huge difference that modern day practitioners must learn. There's a different This is a different approach. It's not appropriation, it's appreciation and inspiration. Let's move forward. Now, let's talk about a few more popular labels, such as pagan, witch, and oracle. Personally, I feel that all three apply to me in some way, shape, or form. Pagan is someone that venerates nature and follows its natural cycles, and I very much do that. I have my own personal wheel of the year calendar. I have a particular holidays that are very sacred to me that I celebrate. And to be quite honest, I highly encourage anyone on the spiritual path to deconstruct their current uh, holidays, celebrations, wheel of the year, or spiritual calendar, and construct one that reflects their unique practices, because each and every one of us, as a practitioner, as spiritual practitioners, we are all unique. And for me, it's very important to have personal wheel of the year and personal celebrations. But I very much follow the natural cycles, the seasons, the changes of the sun and the moon, all of those things. So that's why pagan is on the list. I venerate nature. It's a big part of my personal spiritual view and, yeah, how I practice, what I practice. Let's move to the next label, and that of a witch, the label witch. For me, witch is someone that knows how to manipulate energy and how to use it to achieve different results. And there are different methods and techniques to do that. Sometimes, although very rarely, I must admit, I do that. So I feel that I can use the term to describe myself with it in some capacity. But I have some of a harsh or controversial opinions about a lot of people online, especially online, that use the label witch to describe themselves. And those people are actually not real witches, but they are there for the popularity, because right now, for some reason, being a witch is very trendy. And because it's trendy, it's getting watered down, and I have some beef with that. But I'm going to be doing a separate episode on aesthetics, witchy aesthetics, all of that jazz will be coming soon in a separate episode, so stay tuned for that. But basically, that's my definition of a witch. A witch is someone that knows how to manipulate energy and use it to achieve different results. That's it. The next label is Oracle, and my understanding of that label is that it describes someone that receives messages from the divine, from spiritual entities, gods, goddesses, etc., and has the ability to translate them for the public or for other people. Being an oracle, there's a lot of ways to be an oracle. There are a lot of tools that you can utilize if you are an oracle to make your job easy. My personal favorite is tarot cards. So, yeah, but I do that for Hekate. I receive messages from her and she wants me to put them out there. This is the other function of the Art Occultist, is to serve as an oracle for her. And yes, I am claiming this label for my practice. I am an oracle of Hekate. The last label that I want to discuss that I associate with myself and my practice is panentheist. More specifically, a Hecatean panentheist and what it means to me. This is important for me because a lot of people in the spiritual spheres are polytheists, and most people just assume that all of us are polytheists, hard or soft polytheists. I want to differentiate myself because I am not a polytheist. I am a panentheist. So let's break it down so that you can get a better understanding. Poly, poly, excuse me. Polytheists believe that all gods and goddesses are beings, are different separate beings that are not connected between themselves. Uh, but me, as a panentheist, I believe that everything is God. So let me explain. Panentheist. Pan means everything, en means in, and theist means God. So panentheist means everything in God. And my interpretation is that everything exists and is God, but the Godhead is more than what we perceive as humans. And when I say God, I mean divinity, not the Christian concept of God. Um, there's the difference because polytheists believe, especially hard polytheists, believe that all deities and spirits are separate from one another. And me, as a panentheist, I recognize the different qualities that different beings, spiritual beings, have. I recognize their different cultures and backgrounds. I respect that. But in my personal belief, they all come from the same source as everything else. So this circles back to the non-duality from earlier, how I believe that everything comes from one source, that we are all one, and the separation is only perceived separation, it's not real. Anyway, I'll be going into a deeper discussion in a separate episode. So when I say God, I mean divinity, not the Christian concept of God. For me, I mean Hekate. She is my goddess. She is my divinity. Um, she is my Ishtadevata, if you're familiar with this Hindu concept. But like I said, I will do a whole separate episode on her, my relationship with Hekate, and more specifically, how I experience the Godhead, the divinity, and my thoughts and understandings around the subject. Now, I feel that this episode is getting a bit long, but there are a few more labels I want to touch upon before we wrap it up. Um, yeah, and the intention for this whole podcast is to have a episodes that are easily digestible. So from 30 minutes up to 40, the longest that I'm willing to go is an hour. So yeah, let's keep it in that time range. So shall we continue? So the other few labels I wanted to touch upon are shaman, priest or priestess, and healer. And I personally don't identify with any of them, but I do incorporate practices and functions included in them in my personal practice, not for the public, just for myself. All three of those labels are community oriented and exist to serve a community. Now, I'm not a part of any type of community, so therefore I cannot function as neither. I cannot be a shaman, I cannot be a priestess, and I cannot be a healer because I am not a part of a community that needs that from me. Okay, now I have some opinions. Okay, I have some opinions. I cannot function as neither, and frankly, I don't want to. Because being a shaman, priestess, priest, or a healer carries a huge, huge responsibility. And I'm sad to say that's that a lot of people nowadays, at least from what I have observed, especially online, that claim those titles have no idea what they're talking about. They have no idea what they're doing, and they are doing more harm than good, honestly. Maybe I'll make a separate episode on that as well. I don't know. We'll see what the future holds. So, briefly, what I do incorporate from each of those labels, just briefly, so that you get to know me a little bit better. Just like a shaman, I travel between the realms. I love my trance work and I love meditation. I do it almost daily. Just like a priestess, I tend to my deity, her altars and shrines. I see myself as an extension of her, and I treat my place of worship as the most sacred place, even if it's only in my home and even if it's only personal. I hold rituals and I give offerings and I do work in Hecate's name. Those are the things that priestesses used to do in ancient times, and those are things that I do for Hekate and for myself. I don't act as a shaman or as a priestess to anyone else. I do those things only for me. Healer, I try to help myself and those that come to me to the best of my abilities, but I never promise miracles. And healer, I work as a professional reader, tarot reader. I see a lot of clients, and my goal in each and every session that I have is to help the person to the best of my abilities. But I never overstep, I never take their power away, I never promise anything miraculous. Um, Thus, I am not a healer, I am just a person that you can come to talk and to see different perspectives, angles that you haven't seen previously. And I'm here to translate messages from the other side and to encourage you to take steps to achieve your best life and your goals. Okay, I think that this is enough for our first episode on the Hecate and Raven podcast. I hope that you enjoyed this and thank you so much for listening. In the comment section down below, tell me what do you think or feel about spiritual labels and which ones apply to you and your spiritual practice. I would love to hear from everyone. It's a curious topic that I'm always interested to expand my understandings around. To finish up, please consider subscribing so that you don't miss any future episodes, and you're welcome to check out my offerings. Like I mentioned, I read tarot cards professionally, I have a membership space, and also a few decks on the market. Everything is linked in the description box down below for you to explore, so please do check those things out. Thank you once again. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. And yeah, that's it for today, guys. See you next time.